Hey y'all, it's Ryan. Baseball season just started, and that is the only sport that I grew up watching, really. So today we are going to draw this really cute baseball bear. So grab your drawing tools and let's get to it. To draw our cute little baseball bear, we are going to set our canvas at 3000 by 3000 pixels and the DPI is 300. I'm also going to turn on my drawing guide, and I am going to use the picture as a reference. So I'm going to turn on reference as well. I'm going to click image, import, and grab the image from my camera roll. And then I can resize my reference tile and move him down to the lower corner out of my way. So next I'm going to go into my layers. I'm going to clear off my canvas so we can start fresh. Now that I have my canvas set back to white on the background, I am going to start sketching my cute little bear holding a baseball bat and having a baseball with him. So in my layers, I'm going to add a new layer. And this is going to be my sketch layer. So within my layers, I'm going to click rename and write sketch. Okay. So I have my pencil color set to black and my pen is dry ink. And for this cute little bear's head, I am just going to start by drawing an oblong, almost kind of an egg shape on its side. So it's not a perfect circle. Okay. Then I'm going to add in his two ears. So his head is kind of tilted a little bit. So his ears aren't going to be at the exact same spot. They're going to be one's going to be a little higher than the other. And then I'll add the inner little circle. So I know I need to color that in as well. Okay. And then on his face, he is going to have a muzzle that's going to be a different color. I'm just going to sketch in that half circle in the middle of his face on the bottom. Now his body is just going to be kind of a circle. Again, just like with our baby duck, the head is going to be bigger because it just gives it that cute kind of look to it. So starting where his muzzle meets his head right here, I am just going to draw in a small circle for his body. Okay. Next, looking at his feet, I have one foot kind of crossed over the other. So about right here is where his leg is going to start. So I'm just going to start sketching down. And then in the middle is where his legs meet, so they're touching. And then on the other side, that's the start of his other leg. So for this one, I am going to draw kind of the heel showing in the back. And then round out the bottom for the bottom of the foot. And then again, I'm gonna do this kind of half circle, half moon for this foot over here. Okay. Now this foot is angled. This front one is actually, you can see it's more facing forwards. So I'm gonna have top of his foot be curved. And then again, curved line at the bottom. And then I'm going to make a little bit of a curve here on the side just to show that is his leg and it's not just straight down. Okay, next I'm going to work on his arms. So his hands are holding the baseball bat. So this hand right here, because this side of his body is part of his arm, you're really only going to see just a little bit of it. And again, because of the way he's turned, you can see more of this arm on this side than you can the other one. All right. So there we have the outline for our bear. Next, we're going to draw in the outline for our baseball bat. Now the baseball bat is going to be resting on his shoulder, but it's going to be hidden behind his head and in between his hands right here. So I'm gonna start by drawing kind of at an angle going up. And then baseball bats are curved at the top. They're also skinnier down at the bottom. So you'll see just a little bit of the bat there. Okay, and then the bottom of a bat is kind of a rounded oval. Go. And when I start adding color, I'm actually I can correct this to make it a little bit skinnier of a bat down here at the bottom. Okay. And then his baseball is sitting behind his foot right here. And then just to give myself an idea of the laces. Okay. So there's our outline for our bear holding the baseball bat. Next, I'm gonna come into my layers, hit the in, and turn that opacity way down to about 30%. That way, I'm gonna go in and start adding color to my bear. I'm adding color on top of this layer and I can still see it, but not as much. Okay, so for adding color, I'm going to come into my sketch layer. I'm gonna leave that on the bottom, so I'm building all of my layers on top. This, I'm gonna start working on his head. I'm gonna use this first brown in my color palette. Now, I like using the dry ink brush from Procreate because as I'm making these marks, it adds a nice texture to it. It's not perfect. It also helps me to kind of create that fuzzy, furry kind of look that I'm gonna get on a bear. So that's why I use the dry ink brush found in Procreate. If you want more of a cleaner look or a cleaner line, I would suggest using the monoline brush found in the calligraphy brush set from Procreate. Okay, and I'm also going to use the same color. I'm gonna make my same small little lines, again, just to add that furry texture. I don't want it to be perfect. Okay. Now I'm gonna go in and start adding in the color to this layer, but I like to do them separately. So I'm going to add a layer below that colored outline that I just did. And I'm going to switch to this light brown that's in the second column. I'm still using my dry ink brush, but instead of being on 10, I'm going to bump that up to 100%, just because that way I can get more color done. I still like the texture that you see from this dry ink brush. So I'm still gonna keep the dry ink brush while I color in this teddy bear. Now I could drag that color in, but then I don't get the different texture that I am with just using the brush. So I am going to take the time to color using just brush strokes. When coloring in big pieces like this, I try to do the circular movement so that way if there's any overlap, it's not as obvious that I have a color going over the same one, so it's not darker. It looks a little bit more natural using that circular motion. Okay. So I can smush those two layers together. And now I can start working on the outline of his body. So between my sketch and the head layer, I'm gonna add a new layer, go back to my dark brown, change my brush size back down to, let's go with 12. And again, I'm just going to outline my sketch using those little quick strokes. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. I'm gonna outline his legs. Feet as well. And it's just personal preference that I like doing all of my different sections on different layers. If you would like to do everything on one layer, that's totally your call. It's whatever makes the most sense and just feels right to you. Okay, before I work on the baseball, I am gonna get all of these colored in, so that way I can really clearly see with my layers where this baseball bat is going to sit. So I'm gonna start with the ears, because that's what I was just working on. I'll put up my brush. Ooh, a little crazy there on the outside. Go. This is another reason why I like doing the outline and then color on 2 different layers, because I went in and I added kind of that fuzzy look with my brush strokes on the outline, and if I had colored on the same layer, I would have lost all of that. Okay, so I'm gonna do my arms next. Now, even though I am going to color this entire piece for his belly, for his body, I do want to make sure that I color in his arms completely because of where this bat will sit behind them. Okay, so now that I have my bear outlined, I'm gonna start working on my bat. So for this, I'm actually going to turn the opacity of the belly layer down so that way I can see the outline of the bat. It also gives me an opportunity to look at my layers and figure out where this bat needs to be positioned. So within my layers, it needs to be on top of the belly, but underneath his hands or his arms, so that way it looks like he's holding on to it, but it also needs to be underneath his neck and his head over here, so that way it's kind of resting on his shoulder off to the side. So I'm going to add a new layer in between his belly and then his hands and his head. In my color palette, I'm gonna go to this really dark brown right here. And I'm going to, still using my dry ink brush, I'm gonna turn that down, the brush size down to, say 12. I'm gonna work on the outline of this brush, or of this bat. So again, the top of the bat is going to be rounded. And then it gets skinnier as we get down closer to the bottom where we have that. Bell shape down here at the bottom. Okay. And then same thing that I did with all my other layers, I'm gonna add a layer underneath it to add in the color. And the color that I did for the bat, let me zoom in. Let me hold on to that picture so it grabs that color for me. And then I can add it into the color palette. Okay. All right, so on his belly layer, I'm gonna turn that back up. And there we have our bat. Now I'm actually on the bat, on his arms, I'm going to erase this little bit of the arm right here. On his belly layer. So on his belly layer, I'm gonna come in and erase wherever the bat is. Okay. And in his belly, come back to that light brown, fill that in. Okay, and then this arm. There we go. I'm gonna work on the baseball last because it'll be easier to see when I actually go in and change my background color. So next we are going to go in and start adding in all of our details to our bear. So for the details, I'm going to work my way from top down to the bottom. So I'm gonna start with his ears. So in my layers, I'm gonna find his ears. I'm gonna merge those two layers together, add a new layer on top, select the layer and make it a clipping mask. I'm going to have my brush still on that dry ink. I'm gonna change my color to this light pink. And then within those ears, I'm just gonna draw a half circle and then color it in. Now because it's a clipping mask, it's only drawing here on his ear and I'm not messing up any of my other areas. So do the same thing on this ear, draw that half circle and color it in. Okay. The next details that I'm going to add are going to be within his face. So the first thing that I'm going to focus on is the color of his muzzle. I actually want it to be a lot lighter just so it stands out. So on the face layer, I'm going to add a new layer, make it a clipping mask. I am going to pick a bright white, change my brush to the soft airbrush, which can be found in the airbrushing set. I'm gonna have the opacity set at 60% and the brush size set at 5. I'm just going to lightly color in his muzzle area. Okay, and I can even come into this layer and turn that down a little bit more. So again, it's not as bright white. And then I'm going to add in his eyes, his nose, and his mouth, and then the blush on his cheeks on top of that. So add a new layer, change my color to black, change my brush to ink bleed. I'm gonna set this down at 20%. Give him nice big eyes. I'm going to change to white. I'm going to set that down to 9, and I'm going to add in the bright reflection. And then for his nose right here, it's going to be this rounded kind of triangle. Nope, change my color back to black. Okay, I'm gonna color drop that in. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of that reflection as well there on the corner. So I'm going to turn that down to 3. Just give him a little bit of that highlight on the corner of his nose. Okay, and the last detail is going to be his cute little smirk or his cute little grin. So go back to black, change my brush size back up to 12, and give him a cute little smile. Okay, the next detail that I'm going to add is going to be the blush on his cheeks. So again, I'm gonna come into my light pink. I'm gonna go back to my soft brush, and I am just going to lightly draw in a little bit of that blush color, pink color on his cheeks, just to add that kind of brightness to his face. Okay. The next details I'm going to work on is going to be on his belly. It's going to be a white kind of spot in the middle of his belly, and then the little fur going around it. So in my layers, I'm going to merge all of his hands together and his belly. So this is the layer that I'm going to work on. Add a new layer, make it a clipping mask. I'm going to go back to my white. I still have my airbrush selected, but I'm going to turn the opacity down even more. Let's go 32%. And then I am just going to color in a circle on his belly. Okay. Go back to this dark brown, change my brush back to dry ink, and I'm just going to lightly add in these kind of tick marks to make it look like the fur around this white area of his belly and the lightness of his fur, and then even smaller ones in between. Okay. And then the last, almost last piece that we're going to do is come into the background color. We're going to change it to a really light colored blue. And then we're going to work on our baseball. So I put the baseball behind his feet. So in between our sketch layer and his feet, I'm going to add a brand new layer. I'm going to go to white and make sure I still have that dry ink set. And I'm just going to draw a circle. I'm going to hold so it snaps to, and I can put my other finger on the screen so it snaps into a perfect circle. And then color fill that in. Oops. Drop. There we go. I'm going to add a clipping mask on top of this layer so that I can make the laces. Go with red. I'm going to turn my brush size down to about 3. I'm going to draw my laces. So the last piece is going to be the shadow underneath the baseball and his feet. So again, on top of that sketch layer, I'm gonna add a blank layer, go to black. I'm gonna go back to my soft brush. I'm gonna turn that opacity all the way up, and I have it set at 3. And I'm just going to, go back to black. There we go. Draw in the shadows. Then I'm going to come into my adjustments, click on blur. I'm going to set that up to 6. I'm going to turn off my drawing guide, turn off my reference, turn off my sketch layer. Now, one little step that I would like to do is I'm going to click on my top layer, and then I'm going to swipe to the right on all of my other layers so that I can group them all together. Click group. And then if you would like to, which I do, I'm going to duplicate this group, click on it and click flatten. So now it's one image all by itself, and then I can select everything and I can resize to make my bear look a little bit bigger.
So there we have our super cute baseball bear who looks like he is ready to just knock one out of the park. Thank you so much for drawing with me today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and click the bell so that you're notified when new videos are posted. Hope to see you soon.